Greetings everyone, welcome to Advanced. This game was played in round 4 of US Chess Championship. With the black pieces, we have Niemann facing off against Sam Shankland. I've already shown a game of Wesley So playing a spectacular game against Sam Shankland, winning in absolute town style. Now, will Hans be able to do the same, or will Sam come back? Let's see what happens here. Without further ado, let's start with this game. Here, Sam goes for d4. We have knight to f6, c4, e6, and knight to c3. We go for bishop to b4. This is the Nimzo. And now here, e3 was played. As the normal line, castles, and just bishop to d3 and just going for d5, immediately striking in the center. We have c captures, e captures, and just a3 pushing the bishop back, but now just going for bishop to d6, queen to c2, and you can go for a move like c5, immediately just striking in the center. And maybe after d captures, you play bishop captures, knight to f3, and bishop to g4. Your position will be absolutely fine with the inclusion of rook to e8. If white doesn't castle, then that will be much more effective. And you can also, if you decide to castle right away, then you can just ruin the pawn structure right away and maybe start an attack. That would be fine as well. So it could go either way. But after queen to c2 here, knight to a6 was developed, and now just comes knight to f3. We have c5 and just castles here, and now just going for c3, c4, just attacking that bishop. And where do you even move the bishop here? Bishop to e2 was played, just comes knight to c7, and here just a4. Is that your bishop is on not so great of a square. You would want to actually make some breathing room for your pieces. Most likely this will be coming soon after, and you would want to also develop the bishop. So with the white pieces, it's just not a position that you would want to have. But the thing is that you can transform this position into something of meaning soon after. But the thing is that you're going to have to do it very, very soon. Otherwise, if Hans takes over, this is not going to be a position you're going to enjoy. And in this position here, you can play a lot of moves. You can play g6, you can take queen to e7, and Hans here in this position goes for the top engine recommendation. He goes for knight to a6, and now comes b3, just challenging those pawns. Knight to b4 and queen to b1. Here just c caps on b3. We have queen caps on b3, and just bishop to f5 was played, and now just going for a5, pushing those pawns all the way. But now just rook to c8, maybe just putting some extra pressure on that piece if the queen ever moves. Here just bishop to d2, and now just comes a6, not allowing the pawn to be pushed further. But the thing is that with a6, your position is, well, there is a move that you can find. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video right on move 17 and find this amazing move for white, which white can gain a lot of advantage for this. So have at it. So congratulations to everyone who's able to find this move. The move is none other than, and it's a beautiful move if you can see it, it's knight to b5. And that's a crazy move. I mean, you're not going to find it in a real game for sure. I mean, only an engine can actually find this move. It just comes a captures, and you must ask, what is the idea? Well, if you go for a captures, the thing is that just your piece is basically hanging. So here just bishop captures, and queen captures. You can see that you're left with a really bad pawn structure, and most likely I'll be picking up those pawns next, and I can push that past pawn, and most likely I would be able to get into a winning endgame. But what happens if you don't capture? Well, if you don't capture, the only move you have is knight to c2, and if you don't find this, your position would entirely collapse. And if you go for this knight caps on d6, now just knight caps on a1 and queen caps on b7. That knight has no retreat squares for now, but the thing is that it's not about the retreat squares as much as it is about your pieces, and all of these things are hanging, and it's just very difficult to try and do anything. Even if you go for this queen caps on d6, which seems like a decent move, there will be this bishop to b4, and now your entire position is collapsing. And you can see that that pass pawn is going to be a bit too strong once you capture this. First, I'm going to pick up the exchange. Next, I'm going to pick up the knight. Then I'm going to pick up the pawn, and then I'm going to be pushing those pawns all the way, and I might be able to create a pass pawn and a winning position. So that was the idea behind all of this. But after a6, here g3 was played. Now what do you do? So that advantage right goes out of the window. But here you can go for this bishop to c2 now, and bishop to c2 is a crazy move to find, because the thing is that, hey, queen to b2, queen to e7. Now you go rook f to c1, just challenging those two pieces. Bishop goes back to d3, asking for a trade. Obviously, if you trade, you can see that knight will be there, and then you lose the exchange. So obviously you don't want that to happen. But now just knight to e5, and the play goes on. I mean, this game could be either one. This could be anyone's game. Most likely you're going to have to bring the bishop back to f5, and yes, the game goes on from there, but still. After g3, here queen to e7 was played, not going for all of these shenanigans. Hey, just rook f to c1, and now just rook to c7. Knight to e5, now finally jumping in with the knight, but rook f to c8, and here we have queen to b2. And now just going for this knight to c2, just challenging that. So can you really go for this? If you go for rook caps on c2, the thing is that it won't yield much, because that was the move that was played. If you go for any other move, let's say you try to go for rook to a4 in this position, just getting the rook activated, bishop to a3, and that's the problem in this position. Rook caps on a3, rook captures, knight, and just going for rook to d1, h5 comes, and your position just collapses, because the thing is that you're going to have to sacrifice the rook for two pieces, and that's why here either you do it this way or you just do it with rook caps on c2. So here that was played, bishop captures, we have knight to g4, and now just going for bishop to e4. The thing is that if you capture this, the trouble just keeps on mounting on for you, because here just comes this very nice, the idea is this very nice bishop to b4, and now this pin is a bit too strong to be able to handle, and the only move that works in this position is knight to c4, and good luck finding that. If you play rook to c1 in this position, it seems like a decent move. The thing is, it doesn't work, because bishop captures, you play knight to e4, and now you just basically lose the piece and you lose the game. Knight to c4, on the other hand, you're going to have to play d captures, that is shut it off, and most likely you can still try and hope for surviving this game, but that's not going to happen. But after bishop caps on c2, hey, knight to g4 was played, not going for all of those lines, bishop to e4, and just knight caps on f6, we have g captures, and if you go for queen captures, then just comes bishop to g4, attacking the rook caps on c3, and after this bishop captures, the thing is that that bishop is doing a very fine job of not allowing the queen to enter to try and go for a mate in this position. So obviously, and also it's just attacking that piece, so you have to be a little bit careful in this position. And after knight caps on f6, g caps on f6 was played, so not going for all of that. We have bishop to g4 nonetheless, but just now comes f5, bishop to e2, h5, now just pushing those pawns all the way. And the best is just to capture it. Why allow h4? And that was exactly played in this position. Now what do you do? How do you start an attack and just capitalize on those pieces? If you go for queen to e6, just trying to remaneuver the queen to better squares, this knight caps on e4, f captures, bishop to d1, and most likely king to g7 will be played. Yes, it looks very scary, but the rook is jumping in, queen can jump in later. I mean, the position is absolutely amazing. If you go for h4 now, just trying to not allow anything, then this comes queen to h3, bishop to b4, and bishop captures, and queen captures, a rook to c1, and you can see that your position could be really bad, and Hans will definitely convert this to a win. But after bishop caps on h5, hey, king to g7 was played, now just comes this bishop to d1, and we have rook to h8, and here h4 now, same lines but different moves. Definitely the queen was on e6, and that was very much helpful to queen to try and infiltrate, but here rook to c6 comes, and now just comes this knight caps on e4, we have f captures, and here in this position, what do? The move that you want to find to survive in this position is very difficult to spot, and the thing is that you can try for yourself, but I'm just going to show it nonetheless. Hey, bishop to e1 is the move that you want to find. It's a crazy move to be able to understand why it works, because here if you go for bishop to b8, yes, you have to play bishop to b8. Hey, queen to e2, then just comes to rook to g6, and now you can see the trouble. There is a lot of troubling moves, and the idea is bishop just guards everything. You cannot, that is the threat basically. Now just picking up that pawn, if you go for h5, h5 is an amazing idea, because hey, queen to d7, yes, you're sacrificing an entire rook. You cannot go for this. If you go for h captures, then just comes this queen to h3, and you can just resign right away. What you would want to play in this position is rook to b1, and maybe, just maybe, you can hope to survive this attack. You cannot capture the rook, but the thing is that after f caps on e4, hey, rook to b1 was played, and rook to b1 is a move played a bit too early. You're gonna have to go through all those moves and then play this, but now comes this beautiful move that was played by Hans, and that is an amazing move. If you want to spot the move, pause the video right here. You're gonna really love yourself if you're gonna be able to find this attacking move. And the idea is rook captures on h4, sacrificing an entire rook, because here g captures on h4, and now just comes queen captures on h4, and either you're getting checkmated, either the bishop is coming in, either the rook is coming in. There is nothing you can do. Here king to f1 was played, but now just comes bishop to g3, and it's a beautiful move as well. You cannot even go for f caps on g3, because you just get checkmated. Here queen to h1 check, king to e2, rook to f6, and now just going for bishop to e1 to try and survive, but just comes queen to g2 check, bishop to f2, and here queen caps on f2 would be checkmate, so you cannot go for that. So here bishop to e1 was played in this position, but bishop to e1, now that defensive resource is a bit too late, because now just comes rook to f6, and here queen to c2, but just queen to h1 check, king to e2, queen to g2 check, and still this is pinned. Unfortunately, you cannot do anything. Here king to d2 was tried, but now just comes bishop caps on f2, we have bishop to e2, not trading more pieces, but just here bishop caps on e3 was played to lure the king forward. Here you cannot capture this. If you capture this, you just get mated. So here queen to g5 would be a very nice checkmate, by the way. Here, king to d1, but now just comes queen to g1. Here, queen to c8 was played, but just bishop to g5, rook caps on b7, and now just going for this bishop to h4. How do you save that piece? Well, it's very difficult to try and save that piece. Here, queen to g4 check was played, but now just comes queen captures, bishop captures, and you must be thinking you're out of the waters. Finally, the queens are off, but now just comes rook to f1, and there is not much you can do to survive. And engine evaluation, if you see it closely, it's just giving it as a draw. But the thing is that with all of these things happening at the same time, you're bound to blunder, and that's exactly what happened in this game. A bishop to e6 was played, now just trying to win this pawn, but now just comes a rook caps on e1, just finally capturing that. And the move that you want to be able to spot in this position, and this is the 44th move, so both players definitely had time. The move that you want to spot is king to d2. This is the only move that maybe ensures a draw, because here if you go for e3 check, king to d3, and now just comes bishop to g5, you play this rook caps on f7. If you go for rook caps on f7, your entire world will fall apart, because the thing is that after king to g6 you have nothing. If you go for rook to f5, now just comes rook to d1 check, king to e2, rook to d2 check, and next I'm pushing that pawn forward. There is nothing you can do. You can just basically choose to resign here. But after this, the move that you want to play after bishop to g5 is bishop caps on f7, and only this survives, because here if you go for king to f6, now just comes this bishop to h5, and you are covering that square. Maybe you can sacrifice the bishop and maybe try to survive this in the end game. It's just very difficult and very hard to tell. But after rook caps on e1, we have king to c2, and now just comes this rook to e2 check, and now this is not going to work. King to d1, we have rook to f2, bishop caps on d5, but now just comes e3, and that pawn is pushing forward. There is not much you can do. Bishop to c4 was still played, but now just comes this rook to d2 check, and you must be thinking, well, now I am controlling that square. Can I sack the piece now? Well, not really, because now king to c1, and here just goes e2. And if you sack the piece now, well, I do have a pawn that I can push, and I'm also controlling this, so there is not much. And I have another pawn which I'm going to be pushing later in the future. So here rook caps on f7 was played, eliminating one of it, but just comes king to g6, bishop caps on e2, rook captures, finally sacrificing the bishop. But now, is this enough for a win? We're gonna have to see. Here rook to a7 was played, just finally going after that pawn. And now, do you have to actually save the pawn to be able to survive and try to win this game? Well, here rook to e6 was played. Yes, you do. Now just comes d5, rook to d6, king to c2, and just bishop to f2 was played, attacking the rook, rook to e8, and just king to f7. Now just going for this king to b3, we have king to e7, king to c4, and king to d7. And now both players have roughly 27 minutes, and now it's going to be a little bit difficult to be able to spot the right moves, but still it's an end game. Any blunder and you're just gone, and white doesn't have that much time, and neither does he have any advantage in this position. Rook to f8, now just comes bishop to h4, rook to f7 check, bishop to e7, and rook to h7 was played, but now just comes rook to g6. And now what do you do in this position? Here king to d4 was played, king to d6, now just comes king to e4, bishop to d8, and rook to h1. Now just comes rook to g4 check, king moves, and here just going for this rook to h4. If you trade, you're in a completely lost endgame. There is nothing you would be able to do. But if you don't trade, you don't have any compensation. Here just rook to g1 was played, king to c5, d6, now just rook to d4 was played, going after the pawn. We have rook to c1 check, king to b5, and it was on this move, on just move 67, that Sam Shankland resigned the game, and Hans got this spectacular victory with the black pieces against Sam, and now he is up points, so maybe he will face off against Wesley So or someone equally stronger in the US Chess Championship. Let's see what that does. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'll be coming back with some of these amazing games, so stay tuned to the channel, stay updated, and I'll be seeing you guys very soon. Thank you very much for watching.